This man right here is a priest, and he won the 2012 Goldman Environmental Prize. And he's calling for urgent and collaborative action to avert the worsening effect of dirty energy. He spoke at an international gathering in Chicago and said voices of faith should be part of the campaigns in framing the agenda for collaborative action. He emphasized the challenge for ecological conversion in energy policy to protect and sustain the common home, and says the Catholic Church has been very slow and somehow ambivalent in responding to ecological problems. He says with Laudato Si, church people have taken up the challenge of pursuing a transformative ecological consciousness. And he says Catholics are challenged to come together as a church and to be in solidarity with the global community to protect the planet and to pursue our campaigns for a sustainable future. Climate. Pope appeals to local churches to mobilize. He encourages the global Catholic climate movement. On February 1st, 2017, the Pope appealed to local churches to mobilize for the protection of the planet. In the course of the general audience in the Vatican's Paul VI Hall, he greeted the delegation of the Global Catholic Climate Movement, GCCM. The objective of the movement is notably to sensitize Catholics through its networks to promote ecological conversion towards a low-carbon society and to require leaders to engage in ambitious climatic action. What is ecological conversion? On December 2nd, 2015, in an article called Our Common Home, Times of Malta writer Emmanuel writes this: ecological conversion also means dealing with time differently, both as an individual and as a society. We need to rediscover the rhythm of time, the alternation between work and rest, with Sunday as the commonly shared weekly day of rest. In other words, Pope Francis and Edwin Garrigues are calling for global mobilization of Catholics to enforce global Sunday laws.
Ti incoraggio a continuare ad essere reti affinché le chiese locali rispondano con determinazione al grido della terra e al grido dei poveri.
Quiero lío en las diócesis, quiero que se salga afuera, quiero que la iglesia salga a la calle.
This is the Catholic Climate Covenant's petition to President Donald Trump, and in it states, as you take office, we urge you to demonstrate bold leadership in addressing the climate crisis by honoring the Paris Agreement, contributing to the Green Climate Fund, and implementing the Clean Power Plan. It says the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, USCCB, strongly supports a national carbon pollution standard as essential to effective implementation of the Paris Agreement. And skipping over the points, we'll come back to one of them in a moment. An overwhelming majority of Catholics in the United States, 73%, believe that government needs to do more to address the issue of climate change, a sentiment repeatedly expressed by Pope Francis and our bishops. At this point here, it says, maintain the United States moral leadership, and we'll come back to that in a moment, by honoring the Paris Agreement, COP21. The Paris Agreement, which was signed by 175 nations and came less than 1 year after Pope Francis's encyclical on climate change, Laudato Si. Continuing and taking swift action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions between 26 and 28% compared with 2005 levels by 2025. And what do you suppose is their end game? To reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Slow Sunday, the simple solution to global warming. Indian activist Satish Kumar wrote in his article, "We cannot wait until governments are enlightened enough to legislate and cap the carbon emissions. Matters are urgent. We have to act now without any delay." One thing we can easily do to achieve this goal, we can declare Sunday to be a fossil fuel-free day, or a low-carbon day, or at least an energy-saving day. And see, even though this article came out in 2009, it proves that these talking points have been being pushed and are continuously being pushed out there to enforce global Sunday laws. Here we have an article that says former GOP cabinet members pitch carbon tax to White House. And it says a group of Republican former cabinet members hope to persuade the Trump administration to act on climate change with a proposal to impose a carbon tax and dividend system. Halstead said Republican lawmakers have expressed interest behind the scenes in finding a proposal on climate change. And it has to be the Republican right that is pushing forth this carbon tax, because the Democratic left is already behind the climate change issue. And if you can get the Republican right to come out and to push for this, they can join together with the Democratic left, just like 175 nations joined together in December 21st, COP21 Paris Agreement. Climate change will be seen and is being taught as a moral issue. And it has to be taught as a moral issue so that people can bring out God's 10 commandments, the moral law of God. And there, Catholic officials and Catholic people will convince others, Protestants, etc., to go forward and enforce Sunday laws, first in the United States of America and then the rest of the world. In this article here, it says Catholic conferences provide a voice for the church at state capitals. It says it's not uncommon in state houses across the country for a priest or a bishop to offer a blessing at the beginning of the legislative session. And so we see here the Catholic people are already involved in the legislative session, invoking their God. Continuing, but many Catholics might be surprised to learn that the Church's presence in the halls of local governance continues well after the session has been gavelled in. Continuing, in state capitals, from Sacramento to St. Paul, Tallahassee to Topeka, the Catholic Church is advocating for policies in line with a consistent ethic of life through the work of state Catholic conferences. The Catholic Church and Catholic conferences boldly and bravely enter the fray of politics with compassion, respect, and most importantly, as they believe it to be, the truth, said Jenny Kraska, Executive Director of the Colorado Catholic Conference. The roles a Catholic conference plays can vary slightly by state, with some conferences taking on added duties, such as administration of diocesan employee benefits. At the heart of it, though, a state Catholic conference serves as the official public policy voice of the state's bishops, coordinating the public policy efforts of several dioceses. When we speak, we do so on behalf of our state's bishops, and it is their positions on legislation that we convey, explained Jeff Caruso, Executive Director of the Virginia Catholic Conference.
Catholics are an important part of the American story. America has been strengthened by hardworking Catholics. From New York to California, the Catholic story is truly unique, and it's a great story. From marching for civil rights to educating millions of children, serving the poor, and helping define the pro-life movement, clergy and lay Catholics across the country have made countless contributions to the American success and the American success story. Washington politicians have been hostile to the church. They have been hostile to Catholics. They have been hostile to the members of Catholicism. My administration will stand side by side with the American Catholics to promote the values we all share as Christians and Americans. God bless you. God bless the United States of America. We will make America great again.
Probably had 50 of the ministers and pastors, different folks, came up to my office, and they're really under tremendous pressure because they don't want to have their tax-exempt status taken away. Yeah. This happened during the Lyndon Johnson presidency, and I said, why is it that you folks are pushed around so much? Christianity. These are the pastors, and these are strong people. These are really strong people. Why do you allow them? Why aren't you more forceful? And finally somebody said, well, we have to be a little careful of our tax-exempt status. I said, when did that happen actually? It was during the Johnson. Well, we're going to try getting rid of that, okay? Because that's really terrible. We're going to try getting rid of it. And I've said that too. I've said that we're going to try getting rid of it because it sort of means that somebody walking down the street has more power than somebody of religion, of our religion, of Christianity, somebody that's an evangelical. You take anybody, they have more power because these people are powerless. They've actually taken their right of free speech away.
That's right.
So I said, we're going to try and get rid of that, and I think we'll be very, very successful. You know, it's interesting. I said, how many Christians are there? Because, you know, we got men, we got women. You cut it in half, we actually have a few more women, but we have far more Christians than we have men or women. So in a way, it's the most powerful lobby. It's the biggest group of people. But they're not allowed to talk because they're petrified. You saw what was happening with the IRS, and you saw what was taking place with regard to certain groups. So we are going to try, and usually when I say try, that means I'm going to get it done. But we are going to try very hard. We're going to get that brought back. And I think it's going to be very hard to counter it because if the Christians and if the whole evangelical Christian sector gets together, nobody can beat. It was the great Thomas Jefferson who said, the God who gave us life gave us liberty. Jefferson asked, can the liberties of a nation be secure when we have removed a conviction that these liberties are the gift of God? Among those freedoms is the right to worship according to our own beliefs. That is why I will get rid of and totally destroy the Johnson Amendment and allow our representatives of faith to speak freely and without fear of retribution. I will do that, remember.
Donald Trump is not going to completely eradicate the Johnson Amendment. While the Johnson Amendment does censor churches, it also gives churches the ability to lobby law. And Donald Trump was speaking that Christians are the most powerful lobbyist group because they have the largest numbers. He is not going to remove that portion. They need that portion to be able to enforce the global Sunday laws that are going to be coming first to America and then to the rest of this earth. This article says, what does Judge Gorsuch's church believe about climate change, abortion, and homosexuality? And it speaks how Judge Neil Gorsuch is President Trump's choice to replace the late Antonin Scalia on the Supreme Court. And his family has been sitting under the ministry of this woman, Susan Springer, who is blasphemously titled as a reverend, and pastors at St. John's Episcopal Church in Boulder, Colorado. Never mind that that's not biblical in and of itself as well. But the denomination is liberal on many social issues, including abortion, same-sex marriage, and climate change. This article here, can a children's lawsuit force action on climate change? The case, Juliana versus United States, was first filed in 2015 with President Barack Obama listed as lead defendant, so the switch to Mr. Trump is largely procedural. But the plaintiffs are seeking a court order that will compel the U.S. government to drastically curb carbon emissions. This marks the latest shift in a years-long legal campaign that aims to move beyond political inaction on climate change by establishing a constitutional right to a stable planet. The U.S. is most responsible for climate change, so it's really the most important case in the world right now on the issue, said Julia Olson, lead counsel for the plaintiffs. So I have a question. If Sunday laws are not coming, why are they doing exactly what Pope Francis wants them to do? Pope Francis calls climate skeptics to ecological conversion. Pope Francis has decried what he sees as the weak reaction of governments to the climate crisis, while deploring the ease with which well-founded scientific opinion about the state of our planet is disregarded. What is needed, the pontiff suggested, is an ecological conversion. Remember, Sunday laws? Capable of supporting and promoting sustainable development. Never before has there been such a clear need for science to be at the service of a new global ecological equilibrium, Francis told his hearers while painting a picture of a world on the verge of ecological collapse and a consequent increase of poverty and social exclusion. This model must not remain at the level of theory or mere voluntary association, he added, but should be compulsory and binding. Revelation 13 talks about speaking, legislating laws, causing, enforcing laws, or making something compulsory. And another article we have here, an ecological conversion called by God and scientists in the cloud forest. Listen to this. She says, Frank and I danced with small talk for a bit, and then I got down to it. I asked Frank which programs he recommended. How do I live out these next 20 years or so, really making an impact for our world? I asked. He paused for a long time and looked at me. I have been studying these things for more than 30 years. The science about what you are seeing in our forests, oceans, and climate is not new. We have known the problems for decades, and the scientific communities even know many of the solutions. We have been talking about them, teaching about them, writing about them, screaming about them, and people are not listening. We don't need more scientists. What do they need? She continues. He leaned in over his mug of locally grown coffee. Don't leave the church. We need you. We need the church. Please help us from within your own community. Contrary to what that scientist said, Revelation 18 verses 4 and 5 said, "And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities." If you are interested in sharing the gospel of the kingdom of God, including the third angel's message found in Revelation 14, please contact us through one of these sites. Thank you for watching. God bless.